Awesome. Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy October. Happy almost weekend. Thanks for joining today. I think we have a good mix of college students, maybe some high school students here, talking about medical school. So if you are thinking about this path, considering doing this, or just, are curious, this is the right place and the awesome group to be with. The way we're going to do the session is we'll have a presentation on the first half about kind of what you need to know about applying to medical school. And so we have two awesome people here from AAMC. And then we'll switch it over to our CI mentors and also AAMC staff to answer questions from you all. And our mentors are actually a mix of currently in medical school, so students right now, and those who have either recently completed or have gone down that path. And so I think you'll have a good perspective to ask any questions that you might have, especially as you start getting some information in the first half. So definitely take notes if you don't have something to write with or don't have somewhere to jot down some stuff. We're recording, but the chances of you looking back on this questionable. So take some notes. So you can definitely follow up, take advantage of all the resources. And if you're a college student, these CI mentors are available to you on CI Connect. So you can follow up with them in case you have very specific questions or we don't have a chance to get to you. And so with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Tony and Brandon joining from AMC. And you all can take it away and do all your screen share stuff as needed. So go for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Isabel. And good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Tony Mancuso, and I lead communication efforts for the Summer Health Professions Education Program, which you'll learn about more during this session. And I'll toss it over to Brandon, who can introduce himself.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Brown, and I'm the Senior Outreach Specialist for Services Communications at the AAMC. So I get to participate in all sorts of cool outreach events and initiatives to speak with individuals who are interested in becoming doctors and those who support them. So super excited to be here with you all this evening. What we're going to share with you for the first half is one of our most popular, most informative presentations that we have at the AAMC, and it's our shorthand name is our Pathway to Pre-Med presentation. And so for any one of you that are considering or are interested in a health career, particularly a career in medicine, this is the presentation for you. Definitely pay attention to the video. We are here for all of your questions afterwards. So without further ado, I will share my screen and make sure that the video is up and running. So give me one moment. Alrighty, from Tony and Isabel, y'all can see the screen. Okay,
Yep, good.
Perfect. Alrighty, so let me go ahead and start.
Welcome to Designing Your Pre-Med Journey with resources from the Association of American Medical Colleges. This presentation will cover some of the tools and resources available through the AAMC on your journey to medical school. We'll cover information about the Mcat Exam, applying to medical school with Amcas, financing your medical education, and much more. As you go through this presentation, jot down any questions you have and feel free to send them our way via the information found on the Contact Us slide at the end of the presentation. If you haven't heard of the AAMC or are unsure of what we do, we're a nonprofit organization that focuses on transforming healthcare in 4 primary mission areas. The AAMC works through many different avenues to support and facilitate medical education. And one of the ways we do that is by providing services and tools for pre-medical students, medical students, and residents. Here, you'll see the pathway to medical school, but you should know there isn't a certain timeline or order that you have to complete these requirements. On the next slide, you'll see everyone's path is different. The reality is that your path may take different twists and turns along the way. Remember, there isn't a right or wrong path to medical school. Everyone's path to medical school is unique, and however you get there is just right. Here is your hub for the presentation and all the resources we'll cover. We'll cover everything from getting experience to preparing for the Mcat, choosing your medical schools, and applying. But remember, there isn't a certain timeline or order that you have to complete requirements. This is Mike. He is a student at the John A. Burns School of Medicine in Hawaii, and prior to applying to medical school, he was a volunteer EMT and firefighter. Through those experiences, he talked about how many of the 911 calls he responded to were from people in rural communities who needed regular health care and were using 911 emergency how many of us use a doctor's visit. Through this experience, Mike witnessed the need for primary physicians and healthcare providers on a regular basis. Initially, he said, "I didn't think I could become a physician. I didn't know any native Hawaiian doctors, and I thought that people from my background didn't do well in higher education." To get started, work with your pre-health and/or academic advisors to develop an academic program that meets your pre-medical and other school-specific degree requirements. If you don't have a pre-health advisor, the NAAHP can connect you with one. To start your journey, we recommend signing up for the AAMC Pre-Med Navigator newsletter. This monthly newsletter provides information about important topics, resources, tips, and key dates for aspiring physicians. To view all the past articles and to subscribe, visit aamc.org/Pre-Med Navigator. A way to hear directly from students is through our Aspiring Docs resource. Here, you'll find information and inspiration to help you get started on your path to medicine. There are fact sheets, resource articles, inspiring stories, and our Aspiring Docs Diaries blog series, which is written by actual medical school students, residents, and pre-med students. The fact sheets are one of the most popular resources because they provide quick but thorough information about topics like shadowing a doctor, preparing for the Mcat, making the most of your gap year, and what's it like to see a patient for the first time. All these resources can be found at aamc.org/Aspiring Docs. The experience that Mike had with patient interaction as an EMT was tremendously valuable and impacted his decision to become a doctor. But you may be wondering how to communicate that on an application. In addition to your GPA and test scores, a lot of medical schools are progressing to competency-based admissions. This means that they evaluate you based on your experiences, goals, and proficiency in the 15 core competencies listed here that demonstrate your preparedness for medical school. Many applicants wonder, what is a competency and how do you demonstrate it? After hearing those questions from applicants and pre-health advisors, we created the Anatomy of an Applicant website. It defines these 15 core competencies that medical schools look for in applicants and gives you tools and examples for how to develop competencies. On the next slide, you'll learn more about the Anatomy of an Applicant resources. To show how successful applicants have demonstrated these competencies, we interviewed real medical students, their pre-health advisors, and the admission officers who accepted them. On the Anatomy of an Applicant website, you're able to read stories from medical students and how they demonstrated the core competencies during their path to medicine and in their medical school applications. You'll also get the perspectives of their pre-health advisors and the admissions officers who accepted them. You'll also find information about the parts of an application, and you can complete a workbook with self-assessment worksheets which help you identify your competencies. To access, simply navigate to aamc.org/competencies. To be a competitive applicant, some have questioned if it's necessary to shadow a doctor. It's true that shadowing is great experience, as it exposes you to patient care in a clinical setting and gives you an idea of the day-to-day demands of a medical career. While shadowing may offer you exposure to patient care environment, it's not the only way to demonstrate these skills and attributes. Here are a few other ways that you can gain medically related experience. Many students understand the value of getting hands-on experience in the health professions, like shadowing, volunteering, working in a lab, or being a medical scribe. If you are searching for a program that prepares you for successful matriculation into health profession schools, check out the Summer Health Professions Education Program. Better known as SHPEP, this free program has strengthened students' academic proficiency and career development underrepresented in the health professions for over 30 years. Funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, SHPEP is a free 6-week transformative summer experience for college freshmen and sophomore students interested in the health professions. The program offers opportunities to explore a range of health careers, including dentistry, medicine, nursing, optometry, pharmacy, physical therapy, physician's assistant, and public health. Furthermore, the program prepares scholars for a successful application to health profession schools. SHPEP scholars have a legacy of success. Over 65% of scholars who apply to medical or dental school are accepted. Hosted at 12 universities across the U.S., students are provided with academic enrichment in the basic sciences and math, clinical experiences, career development activities, learning and study skills seminars, and financial planning. With a focus on improving access to information and resources for college students, SHPEP offers students a variety of fun and enriching academic and career experiences. This program is for college freshmen and sophomore students who have a strong interest in the health professions. Potential applicants must have 60 college credits or less, a GPA of at least 2.5, and be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or an individual granted Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals or DACA status. One recommendation letter and a personal statement is also required in the application process. Visit shpep.org for more information and to apply. Here are a few other ways that you can gain medically related experience. And remember, you can always find other summer enrichment opportunities by visiting https://services.aamc.org/summer-programs/. So when you're ready to apply to medical school, you'll see that the application process encompasses a lot of different things, from choosing which schools to apply to, preparing for the Mcat, filling out your medical school applications, and covering expenses related to the application process. The process of applying to medical school has a financial component. Taking the Mcat exam and the application process have a cost associated with them. However, the AAMC firmly believes that the cost of applying to medical school should not deter you from becoming a doctor. That's why there is the Fee Assistance Program. Before registering for your Mcat exam or applying to medical school, we encourage you to explore the AAMC's Fee Assistance Program. This program assists those who, without financial assistance, would be unable to take the Mcat exam, apply to medical schools with the Amcas application, or use some of the other AAMC resources. There are a number of benefits with the Fee Assistance Program, and they include reduced Mcat fees, free Mcat prep materials, free subscription to the medical school admissions requirements, and a waiver for the cost of the Amcas application and Amcas fees for up to 20 medical school designations. Additionally, if you are planning to apply for Mcat testing accommodations, you will have access to a stipend for an updated psychoeducational or medical evaluation if necessary. If you were to use all the benefits available to you with the Fee Assistance Program Award, you would save more than $2,000. So, it is definitely worth investigating to see if you are eligible for this program. To be eligible for the Fee Assistance Program, you must be a U.S. citizen, U.S. national, a lawful permanent resident of the United States, green card holder, or have been granted refugee, asylum, or deferred action for childhood arrivals, or DACA status by the U.S. government. Approval for the Fee Assistance Program is tied directly to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services poverty level guidelines. Unlike some federally funded programs, the Fee Assistance Program does not draw distinctions based on your dependent or independent tax status. Therefore, parental financial information and supporting tax documentation are required. It's free to apply for this program, so we encourage you to apply. For more information, head to aamc.org/FAP to review the website and take a look at the FAP Essentials to determine your eligibility and get answers to your questions. As you think about when to take your exam, you're probably also thinking, but how do I prepare for it? With busy schedules, classes, activities, it can be hard to balance it all. Daryl Fields, a current medical school student from the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health, encourages students to, quote, develop good study skills. There's no perfect way to study, so experiment until you find one, end quote. The Mcat exam is a standardized computer-based multiple-choice exam taken at a testing center. Almost all U.S. and some Canadian medical schools require you to submit recent Mcat scores with your application. The exam tests you on the knowledge and skills medical school students, faculty, and residents have identified as key prerequisites for success in medical schools and the practice of medicine. It specifically assesses your problem-solving and critical thinking skills, as well as your knowledge of scientific concepts and principles necessary to the study of medicine. The content on the Mcat exam is divided into 4 multiple-choice sections. There is no writing section on the exam. The 4 sections include biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior, and the critical analysis and reasoning skills. The section's test content can be found in Introductory to Biology, Physics, Psychology, Sociology, in addition to Introductory General and Organic Chemistry and First Semester Biochemistry. The exam takes about 7.5 hours to complete, which includes everything from checking out and taking breaks. Mcat scores are released 30 to 35 days after you take your exam. You will receive 5 scores, 4 individual section scores, and 1 total score. Your section scores will be added together to create your total score. The ranges for each section and the total score are listed here. So when is the right time to take the Mcat exam? When you are ready. Here are a few questions to think about to help you determine when you might be ready. When do you want to apply to medical school? Many examinees take their Mcat exam in the same year that they are also applying to medical school. Are you familiar with Mcat Content? Do you understand it and feel comfortable with it? The Mcat exam doesn't have any required course you need to take before registering, but if you feel you need more time to prepare based on what is tested on the exam, consider a date later in the testing year. Will you need to retake the exam? No one likes thinking about retaking the exam, but if you think you will have to test more than once during a calendar year, think about making your first attempt early in the year. This allows you time to receive your scores, decide on whether to retest or not, and then find an available seat later in the testing year. A few other things to keep in mind. There are a limited number of times you can take the exam. In a single testing year, you are only permitted to take the exam 3 times. Over 2 consecutive years, you can only test 4 times. In a lifetime, you are permitted to take the exam a total of 7 times. To help you get started in your preparation, one way is to create a study plan that helps keep you on track and organized. The AAMC has a free 6-step guide to help you do just that, including worksheets and suggested resources to help you throughout your preparation. It also includes some suggestions of study strategies that you can begin to employ now and throughout your preparation. Also, sometimes it can be helpful to see how others tackled the exam. We developed a resource that highlights 21 different past examinees' study schedules, strategies, and tips for how they prepared and what they learned. Further, we have other resources and practice products to help you throughout this process. Here are some of the resources the AAMC makes available either free or at low cost. These include study resources such as the Khan Academy Mcat Collection and practice sets, full-length exams, and inspiring stories. Next, I want to mention our accommodations process. The AAMC is committed to providing all individuals with opportunities to demonstrate their proficiency on the Mcat exam. That includes ensuring access to persons with disabilities in accordance with relevant law. If you are a student who has a disability or medical condition that requires an adjustment to standard testing conditions, we encourage you to apply for testing accommodations. A decision on most requests will be made within 60 days of receipt of a complete application. There is lots of good information on the Mcat website around application timeframes and accommodation types, application requirements, how to apply, and what to do once you receive your decision. Our online system, the Mcat Accommodations Online, also known as MAO, provides a secure online method for submitting applications and supporting documentation. The system also maintains a record of decision letters and provides our review cycle dates and other important deadlines. Please pay close attention to the application submission dates for your preferred test date so you can receive a determination in time for your exam. Now, let's take a moment to see what one physician has said about the application process. Like many applicants, Rose worried about not having a perfect grade point average or particularly high Mcat score, but she said, quote, "During my interviews, no one asked me about my unbalanced Mcat score or the C grades in my transcript. They were more interested in learning about my strengths and the strategies that I use for overcoming challenges." Her advice for the applicants is to, quote, "Choose schools with missions that align with your own. My school is focused on rural, underserved communities, and that resonated for me." Every medical school is different, and on average, applicants will apply to about 17 medical schools. But with so many different programs to choose from, how does one determine where to apply? Keep in mind that just like every applicant is different and has their own story and experiences, each medical school is different and has its own mission and culture. You can view each med school's mission statement and a ton of other information within the AAMC's medical school admissions requirements, which describes the medical school's teaching philosophy, core values, and what they are looking for in their applicants. It can be helpful to think about what you're looking for in terms of your own goals and values. Do they align with the medical schools? The medical school admission requirements resources can help you prepare for the application process and choose where to apply. When you get to the point where you're making your decisions about where to apply, it can be tempting to focus only on academic requirements and medical school statistics. But remember, this is where you will spend at least 4 years, and there are a lot of factors to consider. With the MSAR, you can search for schools by location, median MCAT or GPA, and then review school-specific data, save and rank favorites, save notes on each school, and review pre-medical coursework. Subscribers can view complete school data, including things like student data, volunteer experiences, and median Mcat scores. You can even compare medical schools side by side. The official guide to medical school admissions is a chapter guidebook which outlines the admissions process, but also highlights other things like medical career options, how to prepare for medical school, what medical students study, and how admissions decisions are made. We often recommend looking into this resource early in your process to get a handle on what's involved and develop your own application timeline. It includes access to PDF worksheets too. You can find this and all other MSAR resources online at aamc.org/MSAR. Deidre from University of Virginia School of Medicine says, quote, "You don't have to be a perfect applicant in every category, but the personal statement is very important. You've taken your prerequisites, gotten your experience, and now you're ready to apply with Amcas and plan for paying for medical school. Here's what you need to know." Amcas is a little like the common app many of you use when applying to college. You will complete one application. Amcas will verify and process your submitted application, and then will send it to your designated medical schools electronically. Amcas also distributes your letters of evaluation and your Mcat scores directly to the medical schools as well. Here's a look at the typical application timeline, which we refer to the Amcas application cycle. The Amcas cycle is 1 year ahead of the current calendar year. It's offset like this because the application cycle corresponds to when you hope to start medical school. The Amcas cycle starts in May every year. Medical schools won't begin receiving process applications until late June. Once your process application is sent, medical schools will begin their review process, which usually involves secondary applications and in-person interviews. Keep in mind, medical school admissions are rolling, so submitting your materials earlier rather than later is a good idea. You will need to keep track of the medical school's Amcas application deadlines, as this is a date your application needs to be submitted. Official transcripts must be received by Amcas within 14 calendar days from a medical school deadline. These deadlines are detailed in the medical school section of the application, as well as our website. The information requested of you in the Amcas application is relatively straightforward. However, it's very detailed. so know that completing your Amcas application will take time. The Amcas application has 9 sections listed here, and again asks for a range of information about yourself. Some sections are pretty self-explanatory, but those highlighted in the green require a bit more time and thought. In the coursework section, you'll enter every college-level course you attempted or completed. An official transcript is required from each post-secondary institution in the US and Canada. Also, requesting an official transcript for yourself is helpful when completing this section. The work and activities section is designed to give you the opportunity to highlight your work experience, extracurricular activities, awards, honors, or publications. You may add up to 15 entries in this section and can select up to 3 experiences as the most meaningful, which you'll be asked to reflect on in writing. Your personal comments essay or personal statement will also take some time to draft and finalize. As Deidre pointed out, this is an important part of the application process because it really is your first chance to convey to medical schools why medicine. But remember, there isn't a formula for your essay or a right way to craft it. It should be unique to you and your story. We have guides and video tutorials on our website, a YouTube channel, an applicant guide, and lots of FAQs to help you navigate the application. We also have a fantastic contact center who are available to answer your questions about Amcas and Mcat. Deepika from Rush Medical College of Rush University provides some good financial tips. Her personal recommendations for managing finances are: get to know your school's financial aid team. Be proactive in getting all your questions answered. Financial aid counselors are there to help guide you. Track your expenses. It's a vital life skill that will serve you well in the future. And know what you borrowed and who you borrowed from. It sounds basic, but it's essential to know this for repayment. In addition to following Deepika's advice, I would also recommend becoming familiar with the FIRST program. FIRST can equip you with tools, tips, and information that will help you borrow wisely, and when it comes time, repay your loans responsibly. FIRST can help you understand the financial aid process, manage your finances during medical school, and learn about loan repayment options. Some of the things that you will find when you visit the FIRST website are fact sheets, which are short articles that cover sometimes difficult to understand topics, videos and webinars that talk about ways to pay for medical school and how to repay loans, repayment charts and timelines that can help you understand what loan repayment may look like. Additionally, there are financial literacy resources that will help you with budgeting and money management, and there's a tool called MedLoans Organizer and Calculator that lets you organize your loans and run repayment scenarios. One of the ways to help minimize your financial stress is to learn as much as possible about student aid and funding options. You'll want to use the FIRST search tool that is a separate search tool from the main website. This search tool specifically searches for FIRST's financial resources. You can search by keywords or audience, like pre-med or resident, or even by category, like budgeting or loan repayment. In addition to all the helpful financial aid information on FIRST, you will also find the Financial Wellness Program. This financial literacy program provides information that all consumers need to know about various financial topics, like budgeting, credit, taxes, insurance, and so much more. The AAMC is supporting all aspiring physicians and advisors by switching to digitally focused channels. The Pre-Med Resources webpage is one of our most useful digital tools. The Pre-Med Resources collection includes various links throughout the AAMC Students and Residents Hub for easy navigation, as well as print-friendly handouts of all items normally distributed at pre-med events. The page was designed to mirror the applying to medical school journey, making it more accessible to applicants and advisors looking for information to guide their advisees. The Integrated Learner Services team collaborates directly with learners, like you. We host regular engagement activities that allow us to learn more about your experiences along the medical education journey. When learners like you provide input, it gives us direct insight into what you are experiencing and how we can best support you. One of the many ways we can support you is by creating a student and resident website that gives you pertinent information at the time you need it in a reliable and accessible way. All of the resources mentioned reside on AAMC's student and resident website. The website is a great starting point no matter which phase of your journey you're in. You can always search for information or use the menu to navigate to topics you want to learn more about. I know we gave you a lot of website links, and you may not have had time to jot them all down. So if you want, you can take a photo of this slide. It has all of the websites in one place. To wrap up this presentation, I want to encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for information, tools, tips, and quick answers to your questions. Also, be sure to visit the AAMC student website for all the resources mentioned during this presentation and much more.
Alrighty, so thank you everyone for hanging with us and taking a look at that video. No worries if you didn't get to take a picture of that slide toward the end with all those links, as Tony has been dropping those in the chat this whole time. So now I think that we can open it up for any questions or...
Yeah, I'm going to briefly introduce our mentors that signed on because they are going to also share a little bit about their perspective, and then we'll open it up for questions. We have some questions ready just to share out, but students, this is really a time for you. So, get those questions together and we can use the chat, or you can definitely unmute yourself, turn on your camera and go about it that way. So we have 3 mentors here. And so we have Hannah, Sarah, and Jamie, which are a mix of mentors and alum of the program. And so I'm going to hand it over to each of them to just introduce themselves, share a little about either what program you're in right now or completed, and maybe what you're up to now this school year. So let's do that same order: Hannah, Sarah, and then Jamie. Michelle will be here. Go for it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah. I'm one of the mentors Isabel mentioned. I went to the University of Maryland for undergrad. I did neurobiology and physiology in 2018. And then I went to St. George's University in Grenada for med school in 2019. And I'm currently doing my surgery rotations in Brooklyn in New York City.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi guys, my name is Sarah. I also went to University of Maryland, also did neurophys. Me and Hannah actually knew each other at UMD, so I've learned a lot from her. She's really, really great. I'm sure she will be super helpful to you guys as well. I'm currently at Ross University School of Medicine. I'm in technically the beginning of my 3rd year, so I'm currently studying for Shpep. So that's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Love connections, love it. All right, go for it, Jamie.
Oh, hi everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm like eating because I'm so hungry. But
please eat.
Yeah, I know. I've been just like still rounding. Oh man, so busy. Hi, I'm Jamie. I graduated from, or I was, I guess, 1st year class in CDI, and I graduated from college in 2011. And then I went to medical school. I went to NSU-Com in Miami, Florida. I graduated in 2018. I did internal medicine residency and finished in 2021. And I just started my hematology and oncology fellowship at NIH in just July, about like 3 or 4 months ago. I'm currently doing leukemia rotation in University of Maryland Medical Center.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks for joining and taking some time out of your busy schedules to share a little about what you do. I'm going to spotlight all of you just to make sure we like get you on the recording. I'm not sure how everyone sees people right now, but just so you guys are big on our screens. Awesome. Okay. So I guess for mentors, can you share a little bit about what led you down this career path, especially to pursue medical school and to kind of go down this medical pathway? What kind of sparked your interest? And we can go in any order, whoever's ready.
I can go ahead. Yeah, so I think it is very cliche to say the whole, oh, you like, I grew up and I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be a doctor since day one. So it does sound very cliche, but at the same time, I do feel like a part of me deep down did have that feeling. But of course, I did try my best to get a lot of experience as early as I could. So even in high school, my high school had like a really cool program, and I think a lot of them do now, where you can kind of work as a nurse. So I became a certified nursing assistant when I was in high school, and that was kind of like my senior thing, was going to the hospital and doing that. And it was just amazing. It was an experience that it stuck with me a lot. And I think it's just interesting because I don't have anyone in my family that's ever even been to college, let alone med school. So it's definitely been difficult kind of navigating all of it. So there were definitely many times where people told me like, yeah, you're going to go to college and you're going to switch your major. You're not going to do that. So there were definitely times where I was tempted to be like, you know what, maybe this is not for me. I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything about this. But I continued to just dive into it. I did a ton of different things. I worked as a pharmacy tech. I worked in a doctor's office as a scribe. And all of that, plus, majoring in neuroscience and biology. So I think all of those things kind of came together, and I was like, no, this is definitely what I want to do. And then on top of that, just being a child of immigrants, and just seeing the way that my parents, have had experiences that were not great in healthcare, it was kind of like more of a motivation to be like, you know what, there is a gap in like the quality of care that immigrants are getting and minorities are getting. So that was definitely something that pushed me a lot too, because I was like, this is a gap that needs to be fixed. And I don't think we really know what it is, but it's something worth really, really looking into.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Others?
Yeah, no, I'd have to echo Sarah. I think that it's a really just a culmination of different events. Also just growing up, I went to Wheaton High School, if any of you guys went there as well. So just understanding the sort of uh, disparities within healthcare, and then also just having a passion within the STEM field, to me seems like it goes hand in hand. So if you're willing to sort of push through some of those obstacles, it's definitely a rewarding career to go into. So for myself, it was just a lot of different events, clinical things, and also just witnessing that growing up.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, I mean, my stories are very similar. One thing I do that my path is a little different was that I initially was interested in like research. So I did throughout high school and college during summer, between like a summer vacation, I did few months of research opportunity through NIH. I think first one was through NIDDK, so it's National Institute of Diabetes and Kidney Disease, where they had this program for the high school and in college or undergraduate students, where they could experience research like protocol or research lab experience, and I really liked it. I was initially work with one of the mentors in Georgetown, where they did kidney disease with diabetes, and I absolutely like loved the clinical research side of it, and that's how I got interested in medicine. Overall, I think the reason why I did not go into research is that I actually realized it's really such a privilege as a doctor to participate in someone's life, and they really share things that they do not share with other family members or friends. So to have that intimate relationship and really trying to help them and guide it to the right direction is something that I've always interested in. Of course, I think we're all really inclined to help people, or willing to dive in and really look into and see if we can anything we can do to help the patient. And you get that it's such a rewarding career, and you don't really get that from other professions. So I think that's something that I was very interested in.
Awesome. And I see that Tony put a link in the chat too. So that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So to kind of reel it back into the presentation as well, we'll kind of put them together before we go to student questions. I'm curious just to hear, how was your experience in applying to medical school? Did anything surprise you? Do you remember those days? What was that process like for you? And maybe just like any quick lessons learned, and then we can open up to students for any specifics.
So I applied in my gap year. So I had graduated college and then I applied within the first year being out. And I remember, looking at the timeline that we just saw that presentation about, you apply sometime between May and June, hopefully to be matriculating the next year. So I remember thinking about, if I had seen this presentation maybe in high school or early on in college, maybe things would have looked a little differently or ran a little smoother. So I'm glad that you guys have that experience now. But I think just for myself, staying organized is very important. So, let's say you're applying to 10 different schools, things, keeping track of not only things like deadlines, but also first impressions that you have of the school, or looking through their website, looking at their mission statement, seeing what sort of best aligns with your own interests, and jotting those notes down, and just trying to stay as organized as possible in the process will make it a lot easier come interview season, and hopefully the day that you decide which school you want to attend. So starting early in that process, about a year out at least, and making sure you're taking notes for yourself.
Awesome. Thank you. Others?
I would say,
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, looking back at my own experience, there's definitely some things that I'm grateful that I did and some things that I might have done a little different. And I think maybe my biggest advice would be to be realistic, but also be optimistic at the same time. And I say that because I think you know yourself better than anybody else. And obviously we want to shoot for the stars and, be optimistic and, believe in yourself and apply and do all these great things. But also these applications are really, really expensive. And I don't say this to shoot anyone down and say, don't apply here because, you're not capable or anything like that. But when I applied, I actually did not apply to any US schools. And again, I don't recommend that, but I think everyone knows their own situation better than anybody else, especially if you're coordinating with your counselor. So knowing where to apply depending on your stats and, again, like the video just now talked about, looking at a program, not only like where will I get accepted, but do I really want to go to this school? Does the school believe in what I believe in? Do I feel like I'll be a good fit for the school, let alone, you getting in? So I think looking at all of these things and of course being organized. I remember Miss Ayala was my counselor during this time, and I just came up to her with like a binder and I had a huge list of schools and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I don't know if I'm capable. I didn't have a great college experience. My grades were not stellar by any means. I was totally a non-traditional student. I took my Mcat like way after everybody else, like during my gap year. And I just took my time and I was optimistic about everything, the way things are playing out. There were a lot of reasons for people to tell me like, you're not going to do this. There's no way, like it's not possible. But I tried to be optimistic. I put things together. I tried my best and I put myself out there, even though I was absolutely terrified. And even today, some days I'm still terrified of the stuff that I'm doing. But thankfully, I'm in third year now. So hopefully it'll just, it works out.
Okay, so for me, I think I'm going to say something very realistic because I think I learned it in a hard way. I think for medical school, especially in the United States, scores are everything, in my opinion, and the GPA does matter. So it took me 3 years to get into medical school. So I started taking Mcat and it took overall 4 times. And that's actually not something that AAMC recommends, but I had to take that many and study that long to get to where I should be. And I think that was a part of me was the biggest struggle to raise my Mcat score. So I took in my third year in my junior year in college, and I did not do well because I wasn't really prepared. I didn't study. And then also, I think I also have to kind of let you guys know that I took it before this Mcat has changed. So it might be a different category that I studied, but for me, I think the physical or physics section was the hardest for me to like raise my score. So that was my toughest time where I actually had to, I did enroll in this like a post-bac program where they actually like teach you the courses to, and then it took me about like a year to really study. And then I took it again and I still did not get the right score. So then I studied like a few more months and then I did ultimately increase and get to where I want to be. But it sort of resonates into my further career. So I did go through medical school. I had to take multiple step, which is like one of the board exams. So in medicine, something that I didn't foresee in the beginning is where you really have to have a good test taking skills. And at the same time, your career is actually somewhat dependent on the test score. It's something that, again, I guess it's very different from other professions, but sometimes it can limit where you can apply. So I think being realistic is something that's really important. And also, just because you have a low GPA doesn't mean that you cannot get into medical school. I do have plenty of my other friends who did not do well on the GPA side, but they did well on the score. So I think overall, I think it's very, I would say, like a statistics game, unfortunately, and you really have to build up your own like application in a way to make you a strong applicant. So that's something that I just want to share upfront with everyone, because it wasn't easy for me to get into medical school. I think it's mainly for me, even with the high GPA, from my standpoint, that I really have to have that good Mcat score.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being real and sharing your experiences. I think that's super important, especially as, you know, students dive into this and maybe they haven't talked to someone about it or don't know what to expect. And I think that's very helpful. So I'm going to pass it over to students. If you want to unmute, feel free to do that. Turn on your camera, I can see your lovely faces, or use the chat for anything that you have questions about or want to hear more about. I know a lot was shared, so feel free to ask anything. It's a safe space.
Hi, everyone. Good evening or good afternoon, wherever you all are. Thank you for this presentation. My name's Ahane. I am a current master's student. I graduated from Syracuse University in 2020, and I'm currently at the University of South Florida, Tampa, completing a master's in medical sciences. It has been rough. With a capital R, like really rough, doing the program. And I don't know, like I think during like a lot of post-bac programs, especially like after completing your undergrad, and you know how people are normally taking the traditional route of just going straight into med school. So then like still facing hardships in the post-bac, it's kind of been like discouraging in a way, but I'm still trying to like push through it. But I'm also thinking about other options as well. Medicine is still where I see myself being, but now I'm like, maybe I'm not in the right program. So maybe I need to like switch to a different concentration or do whatever it is that will make me look more appealing when I do apply for medical school. So I was wondering if that is something that is recommended, or you guys would recommend me doing, like look into a concentration that would better suit my my attempts at like boosting my GPA. And also Jamie had shared that she had done a post-bac, but I was wondering if either you, Sarah, or Hannah did a post-bac of some sort, or what you guys did engage in during your gap years.
Yeah. So I did not do a post-bac. I applied similar to Sarah. I actually only applied to a couple of schools in the Caribbean. Again, it's one of those things where you have to sort of weigh the pros and cons. For myself, I knew that I was tired. I was ready to get my journey going. Post-bacs are about 50K where I was looking into. So I didn't apply into any post-bacs, but I do know a couple that I was interested in, that I'm happy to share about. And I know AAMC definitely will have more options on that front as well.
Yeah, so kind of like Hannah said, and this is kind of why I brought up the whole being realistic thing earlier, is because once I graduated and took my MCAT, I thought, okay, this is my GPA. It's not looking too hot. This is my MCAT score. It's decent. It's not the best, but you know, I can get by with it. Do I want to? And I did, again, look at all these different programs. What was the best way, you know, for me to get into med school? Do I want to do this post-bac? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And actually, when I was looking at Caribbean schools, I was in the process of retaking some classes, like at a community college, to kind of boost my GPA, do whatever, because there was a point where my GPA, like I wasn't even sure if I was going to get into certain post-bac programs, because again, you need a pretty solid GPA even to get into some of these like master's and post-bac programs. So I was just in a mess, but I was willing to do, anything that I needed to. So I was about to take these classes. And when I applied to Ross, or when I went to an info session and I applied and I got an interview, it was funny because during the interview, we're kind of talking about it. And I told her, like, I'm planning on taking these classes. And she was like, well, like, let's just, wait on that. And I actually got accepted before I even had the opportunity to go and take those classes. So I had a lot of classmates who had done master's programs and had applied to US schools and spent all this money and all this time, who were in the same position as me, had gotten into Ross, and we were starting in the same place, same boat, but they had spent all this money and time, which again, I will never knock someone, going and getting more education, but they were like, wow, if I knew that I could have just done this way, I would have done this instead of, spending my time and my money here. So again, it's about knowing yourself. And again, anything that you pursue, I think if it's what you are really passionate about and you enjoy, and it's something that is like substantial to your life and you can talk about it in an interview, that matters more than anything else. I think despite me having like pretty bad anxiety, going into an interview and talking about stuff that you are generally passionate about and that you know a lot about because you like it so much makes you look like a very solid candidate, because it's obviously things that you didn't do just to like boost your GPA. So I think keeping that stuff in mind, going forward will probably help.
Yeah. So not knowing, I guess, like what your journey had been, it's like hard for me to, I guess, give advice. But yeah, if you want to reach out to me later, maybe I can give you more of like my personalized, I guess, recommendation. But based on what you have told me, I think what I do want to talk about, and I don't want to advertise any postbac program out there, but I know like several people of my medical school friends who did like several other postbac program. I think one thing I noticed is that some of the postbac program has this like where if you do well in first or second year program, then they give you like a chance to get like a interview, or so they do have this like kind of rules, and it's something that I think maybe you might be interested in looking into, because that's something that I did not know about it, because after postbac, I not knowing whether there's some kind of sort of like a contingent. I think there was like a rule where if you do well, you get a certain score, then you do get this like interview invitations, or you have more likelihood to get accepted. So I know there are several people already took advantage of that. So I think you might be interested in looking into those programs. And then my other recommendation, what I did was I went back to NIH and I did 2 years of research fellowship. So and that actually put me into maybe a better applicant per se, because I ended up getting some publication out thanks to my mentor MPI, and eventually that even helped me to get into the fellowship that I'm in right now. So I think my focus whenever I went to interview was they asked me about how how was your research experience, what kind of publication you have been on, or what are the field that you're interested in, and they will love to hear about it. My other friend who did his focus was more on mission trips. So I know that whenever he went to interviews, I remember like that was like their his strength in application. So I think it's just like kind of, I call it like a package where you have to have like a strong application with maybe some strength in it, and whatever your pathway is, and it seems like you're in like some kind of a master program, and maybe that's something that you can highlight on your application.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I'll definitely take all the advice that you all have given me and taken into consideration in my whole thought process of, oh, do I stay in this program or do I like look for something else? And I'll definitely reach out to you, Jamie, to talk further about everything. Also, to put it out there, I'm a Shpep scholar. I was class of 2018, University of Iowa, Carver College of Medicine. So I was their first class that they had. So hi, Mr. Mancuso. I'm sorry.
Look at you. Love it. I was just about to say, do Tony or Brandon have any advice or anything to add on from their perspective?
Well, so I'll hop in quickly, Tony. I'll give you a second if you have any things you want to share. But I just more than anything, because I think that everyone has already given great advice. But I just want to encourage you to just stay the course, whatever that course may be. if you feel as though your current program is not, either feeding your spirit, or, you're not getting out of it what you need to be getting, change course. Like, in order to really be successful in a profession that's going to call upon you to serve others, you got to also understand what it looks like to serve yourself, and to put yourself in spaces that are affirming, that are supportive, that are going to provide you with the resources and support that you need. So, wishing you all the best. I hope that, if you do need to look at other programs, that you consult the database resource, that link that I've placed there in the chat. But, definitely, if there's any other advice or, encouragement that we can give from the AAMC, just let us know.
Yeah, and I'd like to add on, I think each of you have given a lot of feedback, and it's going to be pivotal for, this person trying to go to medical school. What I would say is that, a lot of these institutions, these medical schools, they have pipeline programs, and I think Jamie touched on this a little earlier, but I definitely want to, echo those sentiments. Like, hey, if you're starting to do your research on certain medical schools, you may want to see if those medical schools have pipeline programs that could then ultimately get you into a state that you can matriculate into that medical school. And typically the way pipeline programs work, like they'll prepare you, and then at that point, once you finish the program, you'll be then eligible to attend their medical school. So that's typically how they work. And what I'd also do is, encourage you to do some research on some of these programs that you're interested in. Just as you're going to go on these interviews with each of the medical schools, and they're interviewing you, you're also interviewing them. I would, want to emphasize here that each school has their own mission, just like you have your own mission in life, and just make sure both of those align and they come together. Know your why, understand, what motivates you, and your why should even motivate you when you become a practicing physician. So those are my 2 cents.
Thank you, guys. Also, I don't know if like the other students in here are also looking into postbacks or other things like that, but I guess like from my perspective, being a student like during the pandemic and stuff, I would definitely recommend, if this applies to any of you guys, just putting it out there, I would recommend doing more thorough research, because I did do like what I thought was extensive research, but given COVID circumstances, I was not prepared for the university to not cater to students struggling like how I was. So I guess like actually having like deep conversations with those who are in a stance where they hold power and are able to make decisions and help students do well and stuff like that. So have those conversations with people, and that should help you pick what program works best. Because I feel like there's still a lot of programs out there that are being lazy in terms of helping students during COVID. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate your honesty. You got really good feedback. So thank you, all the mentors and panelists for answering. Other students, questions, curiosities, things that didn't make sense. I'm scrolling through your names. I know we're at the top of the hour, but I think we have a couple more minutes to spare in case anyone has good questions.
And I guess while we're waiting for students to come up with other questions, I did want to, I guess, kind of emphasize something that, and I'm sorry, could you share with me how to say your name again? The student that was just sharing.
Ahane.
Ahane, thank you. So, my background is in higher education and working on college campuses. And so I know how things can work when we're not in a pandemic. And I've also, through some of my student support work, seen how things have worked during the pandemic. And, I do want to just encourage all of you that to really just, if you already have identified professionals on your campus that are supportive, that are encouraging, that, are going to be an advocate for you, lean into those relationships, even more so now, because it is tough with so many needs occurring at once to always get your needs met. But, those individuals are there ultimately, though, for your success and for you to persist and graduate. And so I just want to encourage each of you to really think about where your support lies on your home campus, and to really lean into it, and to either develop those other relationships maybe that are present on your campus that can help support your success. So I just want to emphasize that.
Thank you. It's helpful. Appreciate you. All right, open floor.
Okay, I'm going to take advantage then. So I actually have a question for a student who couldn't be here today. And they wanted to make sure that I pass this along to our panelists. But their question was, honestly, how does medical school differ from undergraduate? I think the other comment to that question was like, how bad is the difference? But
That's very real.
it's a very honest question coming from them.
Go for it, med students.
Well, yeah, I can go first because I actually it's been a while since I was in medical school, so that's so one thing that I do notice is that amount of knowledge that I had to like inhale was so much more than undergraduate. So that is, and then I felt like I was just studying all the time. That's how I felt. And it was really important for me to take time to exercise or hang out with friends who were not in medical fields, because otherwise it would have been very tough for me. But at the same time, it was actually fun because you actually get to learn things that I've always wanted to learn, medicine, anatomy, pharmacology. So, things about learning about medicine, I think is really exciting. But things that I think is very important is to know how to de-stress yourself. I think that kind of carries on even residency, and now I'm in fellowship. It's medicine is really interesting in a way that I think we have to constantly learn about things because, for example, I'm in oncology or leukemia service right now. The treatment plan continues to change because of the new research. So same thing with the medical school. I think amount of knowledge that we have to inhale is like so much, but at the same time, we do need to learn how to absorb in a way because that will eventually show up in our boards or on our tests. And it was very hard for me to really learn how to organize in a way, and then also to learn whether I'm a visual learner or maybe or I learn in a best way by talking with other people, or just listening to the lecture or reading a book. So I think that was like a toughest for me, especially the first year in medical school, to learn what kind of learner I am. And they usually try to teach you in medical school, especially first year, because I think everyone struggles with that. Another one that I was not prepared is, again, I cannot like speak for other school, but the school that I was in, we had so many tests. I mean, it's just the profession of taking tests. I just took my board exam too. So it's like every year, or even then, I think few weeks we were taking tests, and then you can see your score. It's like literally list like 1 through number like 100. You will see like what people got, and it's very cruel in a way, but at the same time, I think that's how they gauge in whether you can pass your step 1 or step 2. So yeah, it's something that I wasn't prepared because in undergraduate, I just get my own score and that was it. And I get A or B, and I'm happy with it, moving on. But here it's all about numbers game, and you have to meet that, criteria to pass. I also have failed a lot of exams during medical school. I never had that experience before. I thought I was always a good student, and then it was such a shock that I wasn't really a good student in medical school. I think I was just mediocre. Like I never really excelled it. And it was kind of humbling experience to accept that, wow, there are so many people out there who are much smarter than I am. But at the same time, all of my colleagues who graduate from medical school, they're all doctors. So I guess the ranking doesn't matter anymore. But it's really important to kind of acknowledge that, it's okay to fail, but you take it again and then you pass next time. I think that has been my theme of medical career, something that I wasn't prepared. No one told me because none of my parents or my family is in medical field. I grew up in South Korea. I came here when I was in high school. So it was really hard for me to even learn as English as a second language. So everything has been such a new experience for me, and I'm enjoying it. But I do want to tell you guys that it's not easy journey because even in residency, we take exam. Fellowship, there is like another exam coming up. I'm taking exam like every year. So I think medical school does prepare you for that because they give you a lot of tests to work on. But it's something that I do want to prepare everyone going into the field.
Thank you for that. Others want to chime in?
Yeah. Undergrad versus medical school. So this might be a personal experience, but I remember leaving undergrad and thinking, I think there's this sort of just like a level of imposter syndrome that we all at some point in our journey will struggle with. And I remember it being sort of at the peak when I was starting med school. And, just wanting to pass and just, get through the 4 years and then eventually residency. But I don't know, med school has been very refreshing. I think that it's one of those things where you finally figure out how you like to study. And we all do at some point within our career, becoming a physician, because there's no way to do it without figuring out what sort of works best for you. But whether it's, working with different professionals, learning strategists, or, talking with different students, I think once you sort of get into your jam and figure out what works best for you, I don't know, med school has been very sort of step by step for me. And I think in undergrad, what was challenging, I think the reason it was probably more challenging then than it is now is that I was first gen, and I was sort of trying to figure out what even is an MCAT when I was already in college, and what studying really looks like for a successful college student. And sort of that adaptation was challenging. And I think now that part is past and we've figured out all of our kinks and got all that situated, med school has just been a lot more, it's definitely hard. It's a lot of hours, but doable almost. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Hannah in that I think also personal experience for me, undergrad was tough for a lot of personal reasons. But then again, going into med school is really, really hard. Even if you are super smart or super prepared or whatever, it is a lot. Like I said earlier, I'm currently studying for Shpep, and I know Jamie and Hannah have obviously both taken it, and I literally still have this sitting in front of me as we speak. So it's a lot and it's hard. And I think one thing that has helped a lot is that, you really have to celebrate yourself, because I think both of you guys have mentioned it's so much stuff, and you become amazed at how much content you can fit in your brain and be able to like apply it and understand it. And there's every single part of the body, you have all the stuff that you have to know, and it's something definitely worth celebrating. And there are definitely times where you'll cry, and it's normal. I think it's one thing that's kind of sad that I missed out on was, going through all of my first 2 years during the pandemic. So I missed a lot of like my, classmates and stuff like that. But med school, definitely, at least for me personally, I had an experience where a lot of my classmates were very, very supportive. There was never like a competition kind of thing. Like you guys mentioned earlier, like we're all doctors, we're all student doctors, we're all trying to learn. Everyone was very supportive. There's no such thing as wrong answers. We're all going through this together. So I think that was really cool. And I think if you really, really do love what you're learning, no matter how hard it gets, there's never a point where you're like, oh man, I don't know. And even if that point does come, because it comes when you're really, really tired, like, I feel like this right now, but I know that this is worth it. And I love it. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. So there's obviously things like, being super organized, even if you're not, because I know I'm very disorganized, but if I could show you, I have like 12 different calendars in front of me and sticky notes and all of that stuff. So like you guys mentioned, you do find your study method, you do find a way to make it work. And whenever things go wrong, I just remind myself, like, it's not impossible. So it's really, really, really hard, but tons of people have done it. You're going to do it too. You're going to be totally fine. So.
Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I think we have one question in the chat, and that might be the end of our time. Do you want to read it, Miss Yala? Go for it.
Sure. Thank you all for answering the question. I took lots of notes. How important is it to keep our science grades high during our pre-med timeline? Should one be content with receiving Bs and its potential effect on our GPA? Good question.
So I'm happy to answer this one. So I think the way to approach this idea of like, how high should my GPA be? How high should my MCAT be? And this is something that you'll experience also in med school with your board exams, is just aim for as high as you possibly can, because when you shoot for the moon, right, you always land in the stars. So also just following data. I think at least when I was applying, GPAs were 3.7, MCATs were maybe 510, 515. So, you know, a B is a 3.0. So, you know, just if it's organic chemistry, if it's physics, if it's art, if it's dance, but it's not your jam, it's okay. People get C's and still go to medical school. But I think the important sort of takeaway from that is, and then again, it comes back up in med school when you're applying to different residencies of how high should my board scores be, is aim for as absolute high as you can go. And then all of your passions and your interests and all of these other things that make you who you are and just so amazingly, incredibly unique is what's going to shine when it comes to application season. So yeah, I thought it was organic. We don't like organic.
Yeah, I do want to add on to earlier comments where, but I really do not think that one grade of like getting B or C would make a huge difference, in my opinion. And I just think that even though there's statistics, in my opinion, there's no formula. So if you have like a higher GPA for, or if you're getting a better grades in like a different science field or non-science field, I think overall it doesn't matter. I think basically the grades to me is for medical school to see how consistent you are, how persistent you are, what kind of learner you are, how you actually overcome from that grade, and then and they wanted to see how you improve, because I think that kind of echoes into like other people say residency and fellowship as well. But I do want to say one thing. Over the course of now I'm a fellow, but it took me 10 years more to even get to where I am. I've been discouraged so many times by my scores, my grades, the fact that none of my family members were in medicine, so it was very hard for me to figure out by myself. I learned it by making all this mistake. Even throughout medical school, I failed so many tests. Board score, I didn't do well initially, but I had to really study hard and did better at step 2, step 3. And in residency, even, it was a really tough one. And some of the tests I did not do well, but still I got into where I want to be. So I do want to say, like, just don't give up. Don't let discourage like the 1 grade or 2 grades that you had, which were B or C, to deter your path. Because I think I agree with a lot of people have said earlier, where once you set your goal, I think you should continue to go for it, because I don't regret it. I think one thing I do sometimes regret is maybe I should have trust myself more. I think that was something that I regretted, because I had so many doubts applying through medical school, because I applied 2 or 3 times and I still couldn't get it because of my low score. But like I said, eventually I did get to where I want to be. It took me longer than other people, but I'm still at where other people are at. So I'm the kind of living example, but it wasn't really easy for me. But I do want to say, like, everyone, if I can make it, I think anyone can. So I just want you to guys continue to push through and get a lot of resources through CDI. I remember getting my residency and fellowship application even reviewed by counselors like Anna. So yeah, no, I think it's such a wonderful experience to be part of the CDI program as well, because I think that really helped me to not to give up and just continue to push through.
So I just want to pitch something really, really quick. It's a little unrelated, but at the same time, it is related. Hannah and I both go to Caribbean medical schools. And I know that, there's been this huge stigma about Caribbean medical schools and how, you don't get a residency and it's not preferred compared to just getting into an American school. And of course, I think all of us, even us that go to Caribbean schools, can agree that we want to go to American medical schools because we are, American citizens, and that's what we want. We want a residency here. But as a student in a Caribbean medical school, I think it's really important to kind of, destigmatize that and have people understand that there are thousands and thousands of Caribbean graduates that have, done residency in the United States, are, working licensed doctors in the United States. And I don't want anyone who is watching this or is in the position that I was to think like, you know what, my grades are not good enough, my MCAT's not good enough, I'm not going to be a doctor. There's absolutely nothing that I can do. Again, it shouldn't be anyone's first resort. And I can admit it wasn't my first resort. It wasn't my decision to, yeah, I'm going to go to a Caribbean medical school as opposed to an American one. No. But I think anyone who's in my position and, you know, being like a first generation student, not knowing, like Hannah said, I didn't even know how to go about taking MCAT. Even now with Shpep, I still find myself struggling, figuring out how am I going to buy these exams, you know, going and doing all these things you don't have like a lot of experience with. I just don't want anyone thinking that that's not a viable option, because like I said, I've seen thousands of students who have gone this path and have, you know, become super successful. My grades in undergrad were horrible. And now in my second year, third year of med school, I've gotten A's and B's pretty much every single semester. So I've done a lot better in medical school than I ever did in undergrad. And I think, you know, believing in yourself and knowing, you know what, whatever I was in undergrad, if I know that I'm capable and I can prove myself regardless of what school I'm in, and I can take my boards and prove, you know, to whatever residency program I'm applying to that I am capable and this is what I want, I think that's really important. So while your grades and all of those things are important and you want to have the best grades possible and the best scores possible, don't feel like if you don't have that, that there's absolutely no option for you, because if you don't have a 3.7 GPA, that it's not going to happen, because I absolutely did not. And, you know, I'm at this position now. So definitely something to consider, not as your first resort, but definitely to keep as an option for you if you feel that that's the position that you're in and it's another way for you to get to your goal.
Yeah, and I kind of want to piggyback on, just to kind of bring us back to the conversation as far as, you know, the GPA, how important that is and things like that. The GPA is only one component of the application, and there's several components, as you learned today. There's the personal statement, which ultimately you can leverage to highlight any other pieces of your journey that isn't already in your application. So you can definitely do that. You have the work and activity section that can really show, you know, a lot of those different competencies that we learned about today, those 15 core competencies. And ultimately, you know, it's how it all comes together and how your story is being told. That's why I think it's critically important for you to work with a pre-health advisor. Ultimately, they'll be able to kind of help you get your application to a better state. And I think sometimes, you know, when it comes to pre-med students, sometimes they don't leverage that. It could be potentially because, you know, maybe they don't have the greatest relationship with their pre-health advisor, or it could be different several factors, to be honest with you, right? But that being said, you know, I still feel that including a pre-health advisor to at least review your application to make sure you're eloquently stating the things you want to say is really going to be pivotal. You know, me personally, I think I'm one of the greatest writers, right? Like, just like to give myself pats on the back. But honestly, sometimes, you know, my tone may not be the right way, or I may not be, or the words that I'm saying may not be exactly what is being read and how it's being interpreted, which is a really important thing, you know. So again, definitely want to highlight that, yeah, you know, it's more than just numbers. It's more than just an MCAT score. It's more than just the GPA. It's really about the story in its totality. To be honest, there are students that apply to medical schools with 4.0 GPAs and 528 MCATs that don't get in. And I just want to highlight that, because just because you have the highest grades, you have, you know, the highest possible MCAT score, you potentially won't get in because your heart's not in it. The passion's not there. And you know what? That's what admissions officers are looking for across the nation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All good perspectives to consider. And I like to say, just like, it depends and there's no wrong answer. There's so many different pathways. I'm thinking back to that map you showed that to look like the metro, like there's all these different paths to get to the same place, right? And it really just depends on your situation. So I hope this is good, you know, scenarios, ways to think about it for your questions. We did get a couple more. So 2 more, I believe. Let me go up. So how many volunteering hours should one aim for, and at how many different organizations should one volunteer at? So kind of similar to what we were talking about, but in terms of volunteering, any advice or involvements, I guess?
So I'll share what I usually share with students when this question comes up, whenever I'm speaking. You know, it's really about quality over quantity. And really just taking stock of, again, what is your why, what is your motivation, what is your narrative. You know, if you volunteer at 10 different organizations and it's just like literally, like people can tell if they're reviewing your materials if you just showed up just to be able to check it off or write it down. Like, are you able to talk at length about your involvement? Are you able to talk at length about what you gleaned from that situation, how it's going to inform your approach to pursuing a career in medicine or in a health profession? Like, so when you're thinking about taking on these, you know, opportunities to serve or to, you know, just get more experience, really think about, again, how is this tying back to my narrative and to my approach and to my rationale for wanting to pursue this career. Another thing that I typically say along those lines too is when you refer back to those core competencies for medicine that we shared earlier, if you're, you know, you take stock of what you've already done, take stock of the experiences that you've already participated in. And if you notice that, okay, I'm looking real heavy on the teamwork or, you know, scientific research, but I need to do more work in, we'll say, cultural communication. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not sure exactly if that's one of the named competencies, but, you know, you look at those competencies and kind of identify where are some gaps, where could you do some more building up of those skill sets, of those experiences, and really kind of prioritize your movements based on that, because some of those competencies you're developing in your coursework or just in, you know, some of the other extracurriculars that you may participate in on campus. So, so just really think about what are the areas that you could stand to build up some more and like be intentional. Try to do a few things exceptionally well rather than doing everything half, you know, heartedly. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that too. Essentially, you know, you get 15 working activities, right? Try to make each one of them count. You know, how do medical schools look at each of those competencies? And, you know, the Anatomy of an Applicant series shows different ways that you can infuse some of those competencies within the working activities, within your personal statement. You know, so definitely just highlighting what Brandon said, definitely use that resource. And I can drop that again in the chat just so that everyone has it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna save the chat with all the awesome links you shared. So I'll post them up on CI Connect somewhere. Other thoughts around volunteering? We do have one more question before we wrap up. Involvement.
I just think that I think volunteering is like really important. At the same time, don't lie on your application, because I remember I did like I remember they actually asked questions during interview, and then if you don't know what you're talking about, if you're just like putting numbers just because to kind of show up, but if you don't know what they actually did or what your roles are, if you're not really specific, they can probably catch that. So yeah, just be honest, and I think it's really important for any application process that you're going through. I personally did like a mission trip, and I think it really helped me to understand and appreciate medical field. I think I went to this like Hopi reservation in Arizona with some of the doctors who were volunteering there, and it was like amazing experience. But you don't have to do that to put that on your application. I just went there because it was through my church. But I think it's important to have like some kind of volunteering experience so that because if you know, that's like where your heart is and that's how you want to give back to your community, I think it will definitely echo into on your application. But at the same time, if you're not really passionate about serving community and you're just putting numbers and just do it, you know, because you want to make applicant complete, I don't think that's a good idea, because like they will definitely ask you, and if they don't see that you're excited about it, like they're probably not gonna take that as your strength.
Definitely. Thank you. That sounds really fun, your trip. I hope you could ask more about that. Okay, last question. I think is nice to kind of wrap up. Why did you each choose to attend your respective medical schools? And I think we kind of touched upon this a little bit here and there, but any final thoughts around why you chose your med school?
Yeah, my thing is simple. That's like the only school I got into. I was waitlisted in I think 2 other places. Eventually, I actually got one I got in like on the day of my medical school started, like I guess the starting day. So you'll be surprised. I think a lot of things can happen even that between that acceptance or wait list and then until you start medical school. So I actually, to be honest, I think that with the wait list school that the school that I was actually, that was my reach school, and I was like, I really wanted to get in, and then I just didn't believe myself, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna just go into the school in Miami. But turns out that I actually got in. I got off the wait list. So that's why I say, like, I think it's really important to like believe in yourself and then just continue to work on it, and you'll be actually surprised to get to know. And I think that's how I just end up where I went. It's mainly because that's the only school I get, but there are a lot of lucky people out there who actually get into multiple school and you get to choose. Mainly, I think for me, the reason why I applied multiple times is mainly because I wanted to stay in the United States. Family is really important to me, and especially like my parents at the time really needed me to stay close. So that was my first priority, to be close to my parents. And Florida, even though it's far away, was only 2 hours by flight from Baltimore. And then I think it was Washington, what's it called, DCA. So yeah, I think I chose that in the same reason. And I actually did not apply to any schools in like the West Coast because by knowing that like I really wanted to be close to my family. So I think geographic is something really important, but everyone is different. Some people can, take a leap on the fate. It's like, hey, I'm going to go to like a West Coast, and it doesn't matter. So I think that really depends. And then the location is also important. I think medical school has a often affiliation with the, I guess, bigger hospital, academic hospital or regional hospital. So I think that's something that like I will definitely look into it, because I think that gives you advantage to get into residency if you have a good rotation or if you have a good experience through, because sometimes they actually majority of the hospital will take their own medical school as well. That's something that, again, I did not see that coming, but so that's why I think a lot of people want to go to a medical school that has affiliation to the big academic center.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can go. So I, in my third year of college, was scribing in an emergency department, and I met a doctor there who had attended my school, SGU in Grenada. And at the time, I had no idea that you could train to become a physician outside of the US and come back. So it was all news to me. But he shared a lot about sort of what the school did to prepare him to be a really phenomenal doctor. I remember sort of like fangirling, like, this guy is amazing, he's so intelligent. And so I thought it was really cool that we could have this sort of alternate path. So I was introduced to this very early on, or not very early on, but early enough. I graduated school. I didn't have time to take the MCAT. I would definitely emphasize not taking on too many responsibilities outside of school if you can. I was involved in everything under the sun, extracurricular, and I think it made me multifaceted, but also very busy and spread thin. So I took my MCAT in my gap year. I was ready to go. I had known about this school for a couple of years. The way that the Caribbean medical school system works, for the most part, is that the application process is a lot faster. So I took my MCAT in maybe March and applied and was able to matriculate for that August class. So that's sort of my short and sweet story about why I chose SGU. Again, it's one of those things, usually people would like to train outside of the US only if they cannot get into a US school or they're from other said countries. So it just depends on everyone's situation. By chance, it wasn't mine or Sarah's situation, but there was a lot of sort of little tidbits here and there. I like my school. Non-disclaimer, I guess. I really love it here. I'm in New York City, living the dream. The surgery rotation. So if you guys have questions about Caribbean schools or even just medical school in general, I'm happy to leave my email at the end and wish you guys the best of luck.
That's actually very funny because I also only applied to one school and kind of just went off of that. So I find this very funny. But I also, graduated, and like I mentioned, not really happy with my GPA, but I knew this is what I wanted to do. So I was like, all right, you're just gonna have to buckle up and do what you got to do. So I also took my MCAT during my gap year. And then once I took my MCAT, got my score back, I thought, okay, let me look at what's viable for me. And, again, being honest with myself and being realistic, I was like, do I want to apply to the US schools, or do I want to try this other thing? Again, like Hannah said, I actually had no idea about anything regarding the Caribbean pathway. So I kind of did all that off of like my little Google researching. So I was like thinking about what my opportunities were, and that's kind of what came up. So I looked at all these schools, and a lot of these schools had like, before COVID, all these like cool info sessions you could go to and get all this info from. So I went to one for St. George, and then I went to one for Ross. So I had open applications for all of these schools, but I went to the one for Ross, and I was like, oh my God, this was the first time that I felt like, there's a possibility that this could happen. I felt very at home. The people that I met there that were, staff of the school were super supportive. I got to talk to people. I actually spoke to the person who did my interview. So I met her beforehand and got to talk to her, which I thought was really cool. So Ross has like these selective people who do interviews in every like part of the state. So I met the person who was for like the DMV. They encouraged me to fill out my application. I filled it out. I got an interview not too long after that. Went to the interview, and that was about it. I think one thing that's really cool about Ross too is that, and I'm sure maybe St. George does this too, but obviously before the pandemic, maybe they do it now too, but they let me come and visit the school because the school's in Barbados. So they let me visit the school for free. They paid for my flight and hotel and everything and sent me out there, and it was gorgeous. It was amazing. I got to see the school before I had to, accept my, do my acceptance. So I got to see it. I got to see what the living situation would be like and all of that. And it was great. I absolutely loved it. I believe with St. George, I'm not sure if it's the same way, but the way that you do your 2 years, kind of like Hannah said, it's a little bit faster than it is in the US. I believe it's only 16 months. And then they're affiliated with their core rotations are in hospitals in the US. So it just makes it you feel a lot more secure knowing that you are doing your rotations in US hospitals, you're, making relationships with these people that are working in the US. And then of course you take STEP just like everyone else, and you match and you do all of that stuff. So that was kind of the way I went about it. Once I got accepted to Ross, I kind of just let all of my other applications just hang out, and that's kind of what I did. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, mentors, panelists, and for being awesome Met students, stars. I think your perspective was very helpful, and I'm just like listening to you, and I'm like, yes, like I'm rooting for you. This is so cool. I could never, so definitely props to you. Brandon, Tony, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
So my final thought would just be, as we said in our presentation with the Metro map, and as you've heard from the med students and doctors that are on the panel, this really is a career path that you get to carve out for yourself. Yes, there are a lot of requirements and things that you have to do along the journey, benchmarks you have to hit, but this is very much so not a one-size-fits-all journey. And remember that everything that you've been through, everything that's important to you, all of those things are not detriments, they're assets, and just continue to work on how to articulate them and how to integrate them into the greater narrative about who you are and what you're seeking to do in the world. And I think each of you are going to be more than successful in your endeavors. So we're super, super happy to be here and happy to support you all moving forward.
And my parting words are, I'm gonna get a little bit more serious here, but give some real advice. You're gonna hear people tell you no, that you can't do it, that you're not good enough. And to that I say, no, you are good enough. Understanding who you are and what you're able to accomplish, regardless of the hurdles that you need to overcome, really is gonna make you even stronger and an even better candidate for medical school. And talking about some of those hurdles, tonight at 7 p.m., we're going to be hosting a webinar, Navigating the Health Professions as an Underrepresented Student. That starts at 7 p.m. tonight. We're going to be joined by the Tour for Diversity in Medicine, and their founder, Dr. Alden Landry, is the assistant dean at Harvard Medical School. So if you're trying to get like insight into, the world of trying to get us there, yeah, that would be great. I know some of you, yes, you're probably Zoom fatigued out, but I will say that this session that we're hosting tonight is going to be recorded. So definitely, as if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which I dropped a link into the chat, which is in the link tree, feel free to, subscribe and you can gain access to that webinar.
Awesome. Well, very grateful for everyone for your resources shared, from your perspectives shared. Students, please do fill out that post-event survey. That helps us so we can create more events like this for you, and especially on more specific topics. Panelists, all of you, Tony, Brandon, Jamie, Sarah, Hannah, thank you so much. Virtual round of applause to each of you. All of these people except Brandon, but we still have Tony from AMC, are CDI mentors, and Brandon, you're welcome to become a mentor too. So that means they're available to you on CI Connect. So if you're a college student, you should have an account made, and if you haven't, feel free to reach out so you can get your link, and you can reach out to them within our system and follow up with any questions, set up a one-to-one meeting, and really start building that connection, and just get reassured with a lot of these things. But other than that, we are wrapped up. Thank you so much once again. Also, students, thank you for joining. And this will be recorded and posted on CI Connect soon, so you'll have it available, and can also share it with your friends. So everyone have a good night. Enjoy your dinner. And good luck with that event, AMC. I hope it's a good one. Night, y'all. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Do you want to stop recording, Isabel?
Yep.
Okay.